Hey there, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are covering another NFL mock draft. This is a really exciting one, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any more NFL draft content. Now, with the Chicago Bears at number one, a lot of options for them. They can trade down, but if they opt to stay here, I think the choice is pretty clear for them. They're going to go ahead and go with defensive end Will Anderson. This is one of those premier edge rushers that can change the entire course of a defense. He is a big impact player in terms of his ability to rush the passer as well as defend the run. He is a complete prospect, one of the best we've seen on the defensive side of the ball in the last 10 years. He is super explosive and twitchy. Will Anderson, with this, the blend of speed and power and technique, is the true, number one defensive end in this entire class. Now at pick number two, we have the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are obviously in a situation where they're definitely going to be taking a quarterback, in my opinion. Bryce Young continues to be the name that's hovering around this organization. I think it's going to be pretty clear that that's going to be their focus. There's probably going to be some other teams trying to move ahead of them to get up to Chicago's spot, but I think Bryce Young is going to be the quarterback of the Houston Texans. He's super dynamic quarterback, a guy that makes a lot of plays with his legs, extending the pocket. Bryce Young is a fun player to watch. His size has been a concern. We'll have to see if that translates to a little bit further on into the draft process. But when you watch his film, it's very, very incredible to watch. Now at pick number three, we have the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona is in a position where they're trying to rebuild this defense. And who better to start the rebuild with and trying to retool what they currently have than Jalen Carter? Jalen Carter is a dominant force in the interior of that defensive line for Georgia. He does so many things well, wins with power. He is super athletic for his size, and I think he is another guy that is a can't-miss prospect. I think his floor is incredibly, incredibly high, and the ceiling is absolutely off the charts. So, I overall, I think the Arizona Cardinals are in a really good position here to go ahead and select them. It starts on the defensive side of the ball. They have some pretty nice offensive pieces. I think their offense is fine. However, offensive line on the interior is a little bit of a concern for me, as well as on that defensive side of the ball. Jalen Carter is an absolute game wrecker on defense. Number four, we have the Indianapolis Colts. Indianapolis Colts, once again, are in that same position where they are looking for a quarterback. I think if they decide to not go with the trade market and find an established veteran like they've done in years past, I think they're going to look to draft one. To me, these two guys are really the ones that you have to consider. But I think CJ Stroud, with his leadership qualities, his size, his arm talent, this guy is a pretty good package at the QB spot. Kind of fits into what the Indianapolis Colts are looking for in a quarterback. A good pocket passer, a guy that can deliver the ball on time and accurately. And that's exactly what CJ Stroud was able to display at his time, with the Buckeyes. So to me, it's a toss-up between him and Will Levis from what we've seen. But I think, to me, CJ Stroud is going to be that pick. And you follow that up with the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks are in a position where they're looking to continue to build this defense. They've had some really nice selections in this past draft. And I think they build upon that with this next one. Myles Murphy from Clemson. Myles Murphy is an explosive edge rusher, a guy that can, definitely apply a ton of pressure on the quarterback. You look at his bend off the edge as well. To me, Myles Murphy is a perfect fit for the Seattle Seahawks and exactly what they're looking for in terms of a scheme fit for this defense. At number six, we have the Detroit Lions, and the Detroit Lions are in that same boat in a way. They went edge rusher last year. I don't think that really holds them back from taking another one. Now they have another pick in the first round that, definitely could come into play here, but having this Rams pick gives them a ton of flexibility in the draft. Their offense was phenomenal this year with Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and that running game. But looking at the defense, that was a little more of a concern, especially the first 8 weeks of the season. They were able to get a little bit better towards the end of the year, but overall, still terrible actual production defensively. Aiden Hutchinson had a nice year, but that is not enough. They are going to go ahead and get the powerful Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. He, once again, good scheme fits, going to work in with this defensive unit. Him and Aiden Hutchinson off the edge. This is a nice pass rushing duo for years to come. Following that up is the Raiders, and it's been pretty clear that the Raiders are going to be moving on from Derek Carr. It's been stated publicly. So now we have to look at their options. Once again, another team you have to keep your eye on in the trade market. However, if they opt to, take a quarterback, it's going to be Will Levis. Will Levis has great athleticism, a huge arm. He was a little inconsistent on film, and I think that was been, pretty well stated and documented through the draft process here. However, I think with those tools that you see with him, it's going to be enough to propel him into that top 10 for sure. Will Levis is the total package when it comes to the frame, the arm, athleticism. That's everything you're looking for in terms of moldability, and he definitely has that. There's some things, technically he can clean up, but at the end of the day, he's not a perfect prospect. However, I think he has the highest ceiling of the quarterback group potentially. Now, potentially. I know there's a lot of people that love Bryce Young's ceiling, CJ Stroud's ceiling, but when you look at a guy, if he's able to put it all together, Will Levis very well could have the highest ceiling. At number 8, we have the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons, there's a lot of different places that they could consider here. I think defensively, there's still a lot of work to be done. A couple of different guys that you can consider. Lucas Van Ness is a name that continues to gain traction in the mock draft community. You look at his production at Iowa, good production, good film, and that is exactly why he ends up being pick 8 here for the Falcons. To me, it makes a lot of sense. They've been searching for some pass rushing help for some time, and they're able to cap that off with a guy like Van Ness that can make a lot of plays and get after the quarterback. At number 9, we have the Carolina Panthers. Carolina Panthers here, this is going to be probably a little bit of a hotter take. This is a prospect to me that I think is worthy of taking in the top 10, despite, once again, some inconsistencies on film. Anthony Richardson is incredible. So him and Will Levis, in terms of actual, potential long-term, Richardson is uber athletic. He is a phenomenal runner. He's got a massive arm. Between him and Will Levis, they are going to have arguably the highest ceilings if they can put it together. But once again, that's a big if. We weren't able to see a ton of games strung together consistently for Anthony Richardson as a thrower, but as a runner, he's as dynamic as they come, especially in this draft class. So Anthony Richardson going to the Panthers, who definitely need a quarterback. That's been pretty obvious. I don't think they're going to roll with their current quarterback room in the future. And that's why I see Richardson being a good option here. At number 10, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, who are once again back in the Super Bowl. It's just crazy. That trade with New Orleans set them up beautifully at pick number 10 here. And when you look at the Eagles, I think they are looking for the future, right? They're looking at their current age on their roster. They're looking at some of the contracts. I think that is ultimately going to land them on selecting an edge rusher. Now, some of this might not be deemed as an immediate need, but Nolan Smith, I think long-term is going to fit in great with the Philadelphia Eagles. His potential is sky high. His athleticism, his strength, and he doesn't necessarily need to play a ton of downs right away. However, long-term, I think he's going to develop into one of the best pass rushers in this entire class. When you look at his whole holistic frame and everything, he's a super exciting prospect to watch. There's a reason he was so highly touted out of high school, and then he was able to put it together finally towards the end at Georgia. Obviously dealt with an injury, but I think that might not be enough to completely knock him out of that top 10. He's the name we do need to watch, though. At 11, we have the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee Titans are sitting here. They need some more playmakers on the outside. I've been stating this about the Titans for quite some time now. They have to get more playmakers at the receiver position. Quentin Johnston, perfect guy to incorporate in this. Why? Because he's got a 6'4" frame. He's a really good route runner and a phenomenal deep threat. Overall, that's exactly what a team like Tennessee could use. Treylon Burks, really exciting player, but they just didn't have enough on the perimeter outside of him, guys making plays. And Tennessee's offense could look a lot more dynamic with a guy like Quentin Johnston. At 12, we have the Houston Texans, who took Bryce Young with their first selection. Now, how are they going to follow that up? To me, I think they're going to be looking in that receiver room, and a guy that, once again, should be getting more love than he is, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Just because of his injury this year, people have been writing him off, unfortunately. When you look at how talented of a receiver he is, how great of a route runner he is, he's a technician of the game, studies defenses hard, knows when to sit down in the zone at the correct times. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a very talented guy that very well could slip through the cracks. I think there's going to be teams that recognize how good of a talent he is as an individual. That's where the Texans here could capitalize on a guy that was thought to be potentially a top 5 pick going into this class at the start of the year. Injuries and everything have, kind of gotten people thinking he's in the early 20s. I think when you go through the process and everything, you'll find Jackson Smith-Njigba in that top 15. At number 13, we have the New York Jets. New York Jets are going to be looking, in my opinion, at the tackle spot. It's been pretty clear that they want to continue to improve this offense. Their defense was phenomenal last season. This year, going into it, you want to improve in a lot of different areas. Quarterback's one that you're thinking about because they were rotating between Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco. But offensively, they could be really, really set up well for whoever, maybe they bring in a veteran quarterback. Because when you get to this point in the draft, I don't know if I have a huge amount of confidence in the prospects that remain. So I think just building up your team outside of that, maybe finding an established veteran that could fit in with this Jets team. And to me, Peter Skoronski, one of the best pass protectors in the entire class, phenomenal in pass protection, does a great job. He's good in the run as well, but his strengths really lie as a pass protector at the tackle spot. The Jets offensive line is already good, but they could make it that much better with adding a guy of his magnitude at pick 13. I think it's a game changer. At number 14, we have the New England Patriots. The Patriots are in a position here where I can see them doing a lot of different things. However, I think offensive line is another spot of need. I considered edge heavily. I considered the tackle spot. I thought about a couple of different places. Maybe they look at another corner like they're accustomed to doing. But to me, they're going to take Paris Johnson. Just too good of a prospect holistically for them to pass up on. Very well-rounded player. Once again, a phenomenal pass blocker. You look at all of his grades so far from PFF this season. They've been off the charts. But when you just actually watch him, right, don't even rely on PFF. To me, he is a stud. So I'd like Paris Johnson here at number 14 for the Patriots. At 15, we have the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay, to me, is going to be looking at a wide receiver potentially. They could be looking at the tight end spot. They could be looking edge. There's a lot of different things that they're suggesting under their needs, but I'm just kind of thinking here, what are they going to need, possibly post Aaron Rodgers? We don't know that at the time of recording this video, but to me, Jordan Addison, he was phenomenal for USC this year, was on the same page with Caleb Williams. They were a dynamic duo. Jordan Addison, coming from Pitt over to USC, there were some questions about, how is he going to fit in with this new scheme, new system? And he was perfectly fine. Yeah, and you had to figure one of the top wide receivers in the country going to pair up with a phenomenal quarterback in Caleb Williams and also a terrific coach in Lincoln Riley. It was a no-brainer that he was going to have a ton of success, which is exactly what I think Green Bay needs, is another playmaker on the outside. They really like Christian Watson, and I get that. But I think they might double dip here and get another playmaker on the perimeter in Jordan Addison. Pick number 16, we have the Commanders. And to me, the Commanders, there's a couple of different spots they can look here, but I think one of the bigger concerns here, and I think, honestly, if you're looking at that guard spot, it makes sense to take a guy like Osiris Torrance. There's going to be a number of suitors, towards, at the latter part of this first round where people are going to be looking at Osiris. So I think taking him here makes a lot of sense. This is almost kind of the same case like Jahan Dotson last year. People thought, towards the later 20s is where he would go. And Washington was not afraid to pull the trigger on him with where their pick was last year. Despite him going a little bit earlier than expected, he ended up working out huge. I think the same case for Osiris Torrance being the best guard in the class, making sure they just get their guy and helping improve this offense. At 17, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's been pretty consistent for me with the Steelers on what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to be looking at that tackle spot. And to me, Anton Harrison, Broderick Jones, two guys that could fit the bill. Broderick Jones is the exact guy you want to fit in here. Really good size for the tackle spot, and his ability to, create running lanes is going to be huge for this offense. And also, he's a good pass protector, but, obviously running the football is going to be an identity for the Steelers. Hopefully Najee Harris can have a bounce back season next year, but Broderick Jones, a big time player, coming from Georgia. They produce a lot of really good linemen, mostly defensive linemen, but offensive linemen, you've seen quite a few come through the pipeline as well. At 18, we have the Detroit Lions, and the Detroit Lions here, this is a huge opportunity for them, in my opinion. They can capitalize big time on one of the best players in the country that's finally starting to get some recognition. Devin Witherspoon. And when you look at Witherspoon and his ability to play man coverage, it is insane. He's got good ball skills, good length, and good size. Witherspoon is a true baller, and I think that the Detroit Lions on the back end, especially in that secondary, are going to need a little bit of help as they continue to fight for, a postseason berth. And I think their two selections here in the first round go a long way in terms of doing that. You get Tyree Wilson at the early part of the draft, and then Witherspoon here at 18. This team's going to be a force to be reckoned with next year. Watch out for them being an actual playoff contender. They were right there this year, and I think next year it's going to be even more of the case. So they're going to make some big strides in the offseason, and Witherspoon is a big reason for it. At 19, we have Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and with the Bucs at this spot, we don't know what's going to happen with Tom Brady. There's a lot of question marks, but Michael Mayer, one of the best players in the entire draft, in my opinion, from what he offers from a route running standpoint, yards after the catch radius. He is a true, complete prospect tight end, especially as a receiver. You look at him as a receiver, he is phenomenal. There's a lot of things that he can do to help out an offense. You can put him in the slot. I think when you have that much versatility that you're bringing to an offense, it makes a lot of sense for the Buccaneers to go ahead and pull the trigger in a position that I think they definitely need, but also they're just drafting for sheer value here. I'm a big believer in terms of draft value, and Michael Mayer gets the job done here. Now, when you have the Seattle Seahawks, now, if we go and take a look at what the Seattle Seahawks have been able to do so far, they drafted Myles Murphy, right? And I think it would be incredible if they're able to come back and take Brian Brzee. I have been pulling him down a little bit on my mock drafts just for the sheer fact that I think he lacks a little bit of explosiveness. However, he's just a really good football player. And there is a lot of, places that would take a guy like him. I just think with his lack of explosiveness and athleticism in general, it's going to push him back in the draft just a little bit. However, one of the best football players out there, quote, and he makes a lot of disrupting plays, on the interior of a defensive line. He's going to fit perfectly in Seattle. At 21, we have the Chargers, a team that's got a really bright future here. Now, I think how they can really amp up this offense, in my opinion, obviously moving on from Joe Lombardi was a big step. Now they're going to go ahead and draft Zay Flowers, who has quietly become one of my favorite prospects in the entire class. His twitchiness, his elusiveness, his hands, everything screams that this guy is potentially, now I say potentially, going to be one of the biggest steals in the entire draft. Now, I think there's a chance that he falls a little bit further than this, but I think once we get a little deeper into the process, people will realize who Zay Flowers is. Boston College, he was not getting a lot of exposure. I think here right now, Zay Flowers is the man. At 22, we have the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore Ravens, I think, are going to be looking to improve at that corner spot in terms of long-term and where they want to be. Joey Porter Jr. continues to climb up draft boards, and for good reason. The film looks awesome. You look at his actual size and what he can do to an opposing receiver, it's incredible. Joey Porter Jr. will continue to ascend in this class, and I think Baltimore would be happy to take him ahead of Minnesota, who's also severely lacking in that cornerback department. Duke Shelley played very well this season. A guy that was a practice squad player, came on during the Cam Dantzler injury. Patrick Peterson, there's a lot of question marks for this team. However, I think cornerback is the biggest thing that they have to address, in my opinion. Now, to me, I've looked at a lot of corners films, and one of the more impressive guys to me was Cam Smith. Cam Smith really stood out to me watching South Carolina play this year, and then actually just watching him as an individual player and focusing on him. Cam Smith is going to be that cornerback that the Vikings need in terms of providing stability on that back end. They're getting Lewis Cine back next year. Brian Asamoah is going to be another big-time playmaker at the linebacker spot. Minnesota's defense will be improved next season. I can almost guarantee that. 24, we have Jacksonville. And Jacksonville, to me, is still lacking the cornerback department as well. So we're going to see a little bit of a run on corners here. Christian Gonzalez has been picking up a ton of steam in the mock draft community, and I think that it's very possible that that's where Jacksonville would lean. However, when I think it comes down to it, Eli Ricks is one of the more talented corners in the entire country. And I think with him going there Jacksonville is getting a guy with really good size, really good athleticism, and he knows how to, high point the football as a corner. This guy is tremendous. Now, with his transfer from LSU to Alabama, definitely changed the complexion of some things. His trajectory went from him being potentially a top 5 pick to now, is he even a first round guy? And I think when you actually get through the combine and everything, he'll test well enough to open up teams' eyes for sure. So a lot of corners going off the board, and you have to ask yourself, is that realistic for Jacksonville to look there? And I think it is, in my opinion. Now with the New York Giants, they are desperate in terms of trying to find another wide receiver. Josh Downs. Josh Downs is super explosive, especially out of the slot. This guy can absolutely burn defenders from the slot, works very, very well. A good technical route runner, super speedy, and he is one that can create a lot of big plays for this Giants offense, which I think they are looking for some more out of their, the playmakers at the receiver position. Josh Downs, to me, is a great fit. Now we have the Dallas Cowboys, and I think the Dallas Cowboys, just for sheer fit, Brian Branch out of Alabama, super fun prospect to watch. And there's a lot of consideration for me taking Brian Branch in a lot of other spots earlier in the draft. And one that I want to specifically highlight was the possibility of him going right here to Minnesota. But with the huge corner need that they have, I just was not able to justify it. They took Lucy last year, and I have some questions about what's going to happen with Harrison Smith. They're very strapped for cash. But getting back to Dallas, to me, this makes a lot of sense. Upgrading that secondary. Brian Branch is a playmaker. He's a guy that tackles well in the open field, plays the ball well in the air. And I think Dallas could be benefiting huge here. I think wide receiver very well could be in consideration. Also interior defensive line, like they state here. I think it's pretty accurate for a true depiction of what this team needs. However, I think the safety spot would be huge to get an upgrade there. Now we have the Buffalo Bills, and Buffalo. I think you guys are going to like this one. I know that they took James Cook last year. I know that, that maybe they're not the team that's the true headline for Bijan Robinson, but I think it's a real possibility. He's going to test well. The film looks great. He breaks a lot of tackles. He generates a lot of explosives, which Buffalo could use even more out of that running back position. And I think Robinson's going to take a lot of pressure off of Josh Allen having to will them back into games. Bijan Robinson is one of those top 10 guys in the class potentially. He falls to 27 because he's a running back, but it's just a true reality of how the NFL draft goes. 28, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, tough for the Bengals, and I think that the title game was a true indicator of what they actually need. They have to look at that offensive line once again. Anton Harrison from Oklahoma is going to be my selection. The Bengals have to protect Joe Burrow better. Case in point, they go ahead and get one. A guy that can play tackle, can play guard. He can do it all. 29, we got the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos here. I think there's a couple of different ways that you can look. Trent Simpson is a name that I really, really like at this spot. He is a sideline to sideline linebacker, super, super talented. You look at his ability to dissect a play super quickly. He covers up gaps very well. This guy has a good instinct of where the football is going to end up, and I like him here at 29. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, that Denver defense was so good, but they can make it even better, in my opinion, by going with Trent Simpson. I think there's some opportunities maybe for them to look offensive line, more specifically at the tackle spot, because they have to get better on that side of the ball. But Trent Simpson here at 29. Pick 30. Now we have the Kansas City Chiefs here. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be looking for another playmaker in the offseason. Parker Washington potentially has the best hands in the entire class. He's a true hands catcher. He's a guy that can high point the football. He can contort his body in different ways of making plays. Parker Washington here. Maybe not your standard Kansas City pick. Maybe Jalen Hyatt's the better actual fit for what they look for in receivers, but having a true hands catcher and, potentially a red zone threat at the next level, Parker Washington here at 30. And 31, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. And with the doubt of Jason Kelce heading into the future, I think this makes that pick that much better. You look at the interior offensive line, John Michael Schmitz from the University of Minnesota has been arguably the best lineman all season long, especially at the center spot. It's been clear and obvious, far and away, it's been him, not even close. And when you actually look at the true value you could get out of a guy that might be, a multi-time Pro Bowler at pick 31, you just go ahead and do it. John Michael Schmitz from the University of Minnesota is the final pick of this first round. Take a look at it here. Let me know in the comment section below who's your favorite prospect in the class. I always love seeing who you guys like, who you're watching. Also, let me know some prospects that you think that very well should be in this first round mock. Now, there's a lot of them. There's some guys that have been cycling in and out between the first and the second round, but let me know in that comment section below who deserves more love in the very next one. I'm excited to see what you guys have to say. Once again, thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.